Hello and welcome back everyone. So today I'm celebrating passing 700 subscribers. So I'm just going to do a quick game jam. This is, I wanted to do an RTS, but I don't think it would be feasible to tackle an entire RTS in a single day. So I'm going to do kind of a mock RTS where we have this sort of nexus thing in the center of the map. And that's going to create like these ships that fly out. And then the ships can kill enemies, and they can also harvest resources. So like this could be a resource thing over here. And so essentially after you create and position your ships, it becomes more like a tower defense game. I just want to have enemies pouring in, like randomly spawning around the map and coming in to try to destroy your nexus. And you're trying to create these fighters to defend the nexus. And so again, these can kill enemies and that'll get you resources. And then you can also position them near mineral fields and that'll get you resources as well. So it's got some tower defense elements because you're positioning these ships around the map, but at the same time they're mobile. So I think that that'll be a lot of fun to make and to play. So why don't we just dive in? I already set up a GitHub project with an empty repository. I created the git ignore. So if you want to copy my git ignore, just find this Gamejam on my GitHub account. And here we are. It's just an empty Unity project. So let's just dive in. The first thing I want to do, obviously, is create some ground. So I'm just going to create a plane for now. It would be nice later if we had some procedurally generated mountains, but honestly, I don't think I'm going to get to that today. So we're just going to have a massive plane. And I should probably texture it somehow, but for now, I'm just going to leave that. And I don't know how cartoony I want it to be, so I'm not sure what the textures are going to look like. So let's just create some geometry first. And for the nexus, I'm just going to spin this like that. And RX minus 90, Control A, apply rotation and scale, RX 90. And what that's going to do is just make it look exactly what we see here is how it's going to show up in Unity. Because Unity and Blender have different rotation systems. But that little trick fixes it. So now I'm going to go to my project, GitHub 700. And I'll scale this up to like 10. And I'm going to take the camera and align it with my current view. So that's game object. Make sure you hit align with view. If you hit align view with selected, it's going to move my actual scene view. So we want to align the camera with the scene view. And then I'm just going to select the camera and kind of even this out. So let's say like 35, 0. And I want the player to be able to select this nexus and spawn units from it. So let's create a selectable script. So I'm going to right click, create folder, scripts, and selectable. I'm going to create a public enum. And if you don't know what that is, it's basically just a list. So we're going to say building and unit. I'll have to name it. I'll say select type. Well, I'll just call it actor type. And in my selectable script, I'm going to say public actor type. And I'm not sure if type is reserved, but we'll find out. Alright, so now I'm just going to drop that onto my nexus. Oh, how interesting. It looks like selectable was already taken somehow. Weird, I've never seen this before. So why don't we, uh, that's so interesting. I'm gonna look that up. A simple selectable object. Well, that's not very descriptive. So what kind of methods does that come with? Find selectable, on move, on pointer down. What happens if I jump into play mode? Interesting. I wonder if that's supposed to be for a UI element. It kind of seems like it. Oh yeah, it's within Unity Engine.ui. So this is probably more geared toward 2D selection. So we're just going to rename our script to something else. I'll do that within MonoDevelop. So I'm just going to right click, refactor, rename. And I'll call it iSelectable. No, because it's not an interface. Selectable unit or actor. Oh, and since we refactored it, it renamed it here and anywhere else that it was referenced. And now we're just going to say selectable actor, and doesn't look like it's compiled yet. I'm also going to save the scene. And I'll just call this default scene. And we don't have any errors, so it should work now. Selectable. Script cannot be found. There we go. Alright, so creating the enum gave us this drop-down field, so we can choose building or unit. So obviously this is a building. Alright, so we're making progress. I want to be able to click on this and have some sort of menu show up. So for that, I think I'll just have like some sort of sidebar here, or maybe along the bottom. Maximize. Yeah, I think I'll put it on the right side. So for that, I'm just going to go right click over here, UI, and panel. And that gave us a canvas and a panel. For the canvas, I want to make sure that this is set to screen space camera. And we're going to choose the main camera here. And for plane distance, we can just say like 1. So it's right up near the camera. And actually, why don't we set that to like 3? Now I'm going to click on the panel. And I think stretch will be fine. We just need to reposition the anchors. So pull them this way. Why don't we say like 0.8? 0.7. That looks good. Alright, so now we have our panel in place. And we can create some more panels inside that. So I'm just going to right click again and create a UI panel. And I'm going to make this one like from here down. And I went the wrong way. So Unity does this annoying thing where usually this would be like a 0, 0 point, but for some reason in screen space, this is the 0, 0 point. So Y goes up like this. I have no idea why. But anyway, we now have a second panel here. and I'll set this to maybe like 0.65. There's going to be a lot of like little tweaking. There's going to be a lot of value tweaking in this episode. Hmm. And it's creating these weird numbers because I think that's like floating point errors. I'm working with numbers that are really small, and so it's just having trouble describing those numbers in binary. Huh. Oh, and actually, I just realized I've been playing with these with the pivot values, and we don't want that. That's changing where the center, like where the center of everything is, and I think we want that to stay at 0.5. So that was my mistake. All right, so that's looking better. And now as we resize this, we like everything just kind of scales on its own. All right, so this is where we're gonna have like the options for the unit. So we could have like move, attack, whatever. And then right here would be some sort of mini map. So I'm just gonna duplicate this panel. I'll call it panel underscore minimap. And for the minimap, we're just going to move this up to like, the X values are fine because I like where it's positioned horizontally. We're just going to tweak the vertical values. And this will be like 0.67 by 0.98. Yeah. Something like that. Alright, so we have the UI set up. We can jump into play mode. The next thing I want to do is be able to select this guy. And then I also want to move the mouse toward the sides and then have the camera actually kind of pan around the map. So we want to be able to select this building. So we have our selectable actor script. I'm going to open that back up. And there's various different ways we could do this. I mean, I guess it would be nice. Whoops, what happened there? Alright, so now that everything is back to normal, I think that refactoring selectable actor kind of made Unity freak out. It's never done that to me before. Usually it's fine, but for some reason today it just wasn't having it. So anyway, it would be nice if we created some sort of selection box where typically in an RTS you can draw a rectangle across the screen and it'll select everything inside that rectangle. We're not going to do that. We're just going to focus on selecting by clicking on things. because it is kind of a mock RTS, but it's also kind of leaning toward the tower defense aspect. So I don't think we ever really need to select a bunch of things at once. So I'm just going to pause the video and look up some documentation. So as long as this has a collider, there is a built-in on mouse down button, or I'm sorry, method. But it requires that this has a collider. So right now there is no collider. I'm actually going to go back to models and select this generate colliders option. And that way, if I delete this in the scene and drop this one back into it, no matter what, my Nexus will always have a collider from now on. And you can see that also generated the collider on this one. And now we should be able to use the on mouse down function. And it looks like this. So it's just void on mouse down. It doesn't have to go inside a function or anything. It's just a built-in Unity callback type thing. So I'm just going to say void on mouse down. And we can just, for now, we can just print selected. Alright, so I'm clicking on it and it's printing selected. And you can see it just printed 10 times, which is exactly how many times I clicked it. And if I click and hold, it only does, it only fires one event, so that's great. So we want this to show up as selected. So why don't we just create a simple ring in Blender? So I'm just going to click New, delete this, Shift A, and I'll create a cylinder. I'm going to go into wireframe mode by hitting Z, B for box select, and X to delete all these vertices. Select these, and I'm going to move them up to the 0 point. And X to delete faces. Oh, and I think I meant face selection mode, so I'm going to hit Control Tab, face, or, I guess that actually did delete all my vertices, so that's not what I want. That's kind of surprising, actually. X, oh, only faces, that's what I want. Okay, so that took out the face. Now I'm just going to select these again, E to extrude, right click, and then S to scale out. And I think I'll even alt right click this ring, pull it up just slightly, and then E to extrude down on the Z axis. And then I think I'll just leave it there. So if I hit Z, this is what our selection ring looks like. And then I want to, from object mode, RX minus 90, Control A, apply rotation and scale, RX 90. And I'll call this selection ring. Alright, so I think that I'll probably, I mean, the more exact way to do it would be to create a controller for this and have that automatically like move this under anything that is selectable. But I think it'll just be easier to attach this to our script that we already made. And I'll just enable and disable this based on when the objects are selected. So public game object select ring instance, public game object select ring prefab, and I guess the select ring instance can be private. We don't need to see that in the inspector. So I'm just going to click on this guy. We should have a new field here for select ring prefab. Drop this on here. Save the scene. And when the game starts, we're just going to create a new instance of that. And actually, why don't we wait until on mouse down? That way, everything in the scene isn't trying to create a ring instance at the same time. But we're only going to create one per object, and then we're just going to activate and deactivate it as necessary. So on mouse down, if select ring instance equals null, we can create one. So select ring instance equals GameObject.instantiate. And we're going to instantiate the prefab at transform.position and transform.rotation. And we will want to deselect this guy when another object is selected. And so we're just going to create a public method called onDeselect. Or why don't we call it deselect? I feel like onDeselect might be reserved. Alright, and then if we're deselected, the select ring prefab .set active is false. So whenever we call this method, it's going to hide the circle. And I suspect that this is going to be way too small, so we're just going to take this object, grab its transform, and we're going to have a public value here for scale. Public, we'll just make it a float. Ring scale. And we want public transform.local scale. And we have to set this to a vector. So we're just going to say new vector3, ring scale, ring scale, ring scale. So the x, y, and z values of our ring will all be scaled up by this amount. So we need to set this to something like 50. And it looks like that was significantly larger than I wanted it to be, so let's set it back down to like 20. And that looks kind of cool. And I think I'm going to drop this into the scene and then take it from the scene and drop it into a prefabs folder. Rather than taking the actual Blender object as the prefab, we should take a game object. It's a little bit more professional. So take that selection ring, drop it into prefabs, and this way we can also attach scripts fairly easily. So I'm just going to click on the nexus and make sure that this selection ring is our prefab. And you can see that little page right here, that's saying that like we're taking the object data rather than a game object, and now we have an actual game object. So I'm thinking I want to have some sort of like rotation script on here. There is a built-in rotation helper. So I'm going to go to Assets, Import Package, and Utility. Import. And then I'm just going to click on Add Component and type Rotate. Unity gave us this nice auto move and rotate script. And I don't know if it's still there. Ignore time scale. Alright, so there is actually an error in this script, weirdly enough. If you want it to there's move units per second and then there's rotate degrees per second. If you set the rotation to world, it actually stays in self mode because right here, the rotation, it's looking at the move units per second dot space when it should be looking at the rotate degrees per second dot space. So I'm just going to fix that. Come on, Unity. You should have noticed that yourself. So anyway, we have rotate degrees per second dot space. So now if we want this to rotate in world space, that'll be fixed. And why don't we rotate it in world space around the y-axis by about, let's say 20. And we need to make sure that we apply that to this prefab. Oh, and actually, I'm working directly on the prefab, so it's already applied. So now I can just click on that, and you can see the selection is spinning. Alright, so what's next? I think I'll pause this video here and jump into a next segment, because 25 minutes is kind of a long time for a YouTube video, so I'll see you guys in the next video.